Howdy guys, it's Doodly Squatch here, and today we're going to talk about imagination. And so let's just go. Today's drawing was a scene described to me by my daughter. I think it was a mug she saw, but she thought it was really cute. But the mug itself was pricey, so she just wanted to see the image in my style, my imagination. So that was kind of fun, having that springboard to jump off of. My old enemy perspective here, trying to make a box and then put things in the box. But one animal that I particularly have grown fond of over the years has been the possum, and I don't know why. They're cute. They got beady little eyes, so they're scary. They got sharp teeth, but they eat ticks and they do good things. And what can I say? I don't know. I just like them. So that's been a frequent subject, I guess, for my art, where I've done a number of possums, whether it's for me or for my coworker Adam, who's very fond of possums as well. And then trying my best to do a raccoon, not an animal I draw a ton of, but what I assumed would be, fairly easy to draw, but as evidenced by the video, I ended up taking several whacks at it until I could find something suitable. And I drew a squirrel. My daughter said it was a skunk, but I just wanted a squirrel. Can't tell you why. It's a big squirrel, though. And that's, I'd say, the fun part of drawing for yourself is you can change it how you like, and you can make it look just as interesting as it does in your head, or that sort of thing. Or at least that's the goal. That's what we try to do. But the image calls for an amusing rainbow and the word imagination, a la SpongeBob, going imagination. And I get, my thoughts on having an imagination, or at least being an imaginative person, is I wish everyone would, everyone did it. I wish everyone knew how to properly use their imagination. That's honestly, I think what kept me from being too bored oftentimes when I was a child was just being able to come up with, stories, ideas, pictures in my head, just think on things, try to picture things that interest me. But being able to, make use of your mind palace, I'm blown away how many people, struggle with doing, anything creative, whether it's, art or just expressing yourself creatively. Or I guess in that same vein, people who struggle to read because they can't really, keep up with the story. And I'd say, probably a part of that is just, a lacking in the mind's eye, being able to, picture things in your head. Fun factoid, a friend of mine, he has, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's aphasia, but, he has no mind's eye. There's no picturing of things for him. A person is a list of descriptors, or some things that would help him identify someone, or that sort of thing. So it's and that's fascinating to me. I have no idea what that's like. It'd be akin to not having like an inner voice. When you think in your head, do you hear a voice? Do you hear yourself speaking? Is it your voice? I've always been interested in that sort of thing because an inner monologue is, I thought everyone had that. But I don't know. It's interesting to imagine about that. Terrible transition. But oftentimes when I was a kid and I would be telling stories or drawing something and people would look at it and they're like, my, what a vivid imagination you have. And it's hard not to think of that as a little condescending. It sounds like they're like, boy, you've got quite the imagination. Not like my kid or not like me, it's like as if imagination was, somehow childish or something like that. But, people that, build rockets are imagining them, thinking about them, that sort of thing. For me and my siblings, we all kind of pursued creative hobbies and things like that. My one brother, he does clown work and juggles and makes balloon animals, does all that kind of stuff, all the while, he does art as well and things like that, but not so much, I wouldn't say that's his passion. He likes performing, that sort of thing. My youngest brother, he works on heavy diesel equipment, farm equipment, that sort of stuff. He has to, think his way around a lot of problems and, picturing the sort of inner workings of these machines, that sort of stuff. When he was a kid, he, enjoyed video games, loved sports, and would make short videos with his friends. That was always fun. And my other brother, he does background checks for the government, at least for a while. Now he inspects like facilities. But his passion, I would say, at least from what I've observed, he's like a great interior decorator. His house is very well set up. His office has a lot of fun knickknacks. Everything's well thought out. And he was quite the poet when we were younger. I always enjoyed his poems. They had really fun rhyme schemes, and they just told a good story, and I always enjoyed that. But and then there's me doodling forever and recording my silly stories for the world to hear. But seeing it in my own children, seeing how their imaginations work, I only hope that it continues like that for younger folks, because it feels like whenever I talk with kids and they're telling me their sort of creative stuff, it often, as they get older, it becomes somewhat derivative of whatever media they intake. My nephew watches a lot of sort of internet horror games, so a lot of his creative output is that, and I wouldn't say it's terribly a bad thing. It's more like when we are building our imaginations, we need to sort of input. It needs input. So the things you love, the movies you love, music you listen to, that sort of fuels your imagination. I guess the only danger being, you don't want to then just sort of plagiarize that which you are a fan of. It's one thing to draw inspiration, but another to just straight up copy. But I don't know. I love how this rainbow turned out. I love me a good messy rainbow. It's kind of fun to do that. But yeah, you sort of, for me, my fandoms, Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles, Beetlejuice, that sort of stuff, definitely, had its place in my youth, and I certainly learned a lot of my outlinings and my anatomy from like superheroes and that sort of thing. And then to take that and use my imagination to really make something that's my own. It's kind of fun, and that's I would encourage anyone to at least pursue some imaginative hobby or pastime, that sort of thing. Because I'd say it's good for your brain. I like being able to like me drawing and doing art and having used that a lot. It translates into I'm able to describe things vividly, and it creates a good mental image in those that I'm describing it to. That's something I've been told that I'm pretty good at. I'm good at putting pictures into people's heads, essentially. But I was fairly happy with this one. I like my lettering. I'm not great at cleanup work and having my lettering beautiful and precise and well measured out. But I like my squishy letters. I like how they turned out. There is the outline, which means we're just about done. But thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you're new here. And yeah, comments are great. I love input. I love hearing your guys' experiences, that sort of thing. But yeah, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.